Hey folks, what's up? Adam here. Happy Friday edition of the Bearded Prophet podcast and video. Just want to say what a pleasure it is to come to you day after day, week after week, and especially at this critical hour of history. Most of you are well aware that we are just a few days away from making what is one of the most monumentous choices in American history, and certainly in recent American history. This is one of those truly pivotal moments that will shape our country, certainly for the next 4 years, and maybe even for much longer than that. Now, obviously, I know many of you already have your minds made up, either pro-Trump or pro-Biden or pro-Trump or anti-Trump, and where you're at, and many of you may have already even voted. But I also know that many of you, like myself, are waiting for November 3rd, or waiting for this Tuesday, and will go vote in person. Now, of course, I want to urge you to please, as much as you are able and feel safe or confident or competent, to go and do vote in person on November 3rd. Most of us are going out to restaurants, going out to shops and stores. I believe that, and because we're following basic protocols, right? Social distancing, people are wearing masks, people are doing the different things that they're supposed to do. There's a lot more cleaning in place. And so if you feel safe enough to go in those public places, then I would kind of assume or want to presume that you can also feel similarly safe going to a polling location. And so I would, again, if you have a real strong reservation, a health need, or something specific, of course, or you're going to be out of town or something, please vote the way you need to. But I definitely want to encourage you to vote, and as much as possible, vote in person. So what I want to get at today is it's just becoming more and more blatantly clear how biased the media is. And I think this Hunter Biden situation has really thrown it in our faces. Tucker Carlson did exquisite reporting with a key source and key documentation, paper trail as they call it, a text trail and emails and things that are pointing very strongly at the Biden family and at Joe Biden specifically. And it was hilarious. I was watching a really short clip on the internet with the press secretary for the Joe Biden campaign. And this journalist asked him, what do you guys make of this and these things that are coming out in the media pointing to Joe Biden? And you know what the guy's response was? We're not going to waste our time on that smear campaign. In other words, we're just going to get back to talking about Donald Trump, how bad he is. That is the most classic deflect and defend strategy. You can't deny what the guy said. You don't actually address what he said. What do you make of these charges or allegations? They're serious, folks. We're not even going to bother addressing that. We're not going to take time. And call it a smear campaign. Those people are bad. They're just trying to smear us. Don't even take them seriously. Ignore the emails, ignore the texts, ignore the high-level witness, ignore the FBI investigation. No, nothing to see here. But what you want to look at is Donald Trump. He's bad. Just ignore Biden, his problems, ignore his mental gaffes and stumbles, ignore that he wants to end fracking, that he does support the Green New Deal or something that's like 90% the same. Kamala Harris has gone on record, I support these things. And but they don't really, nothing to see here. Ignore. Just focus on Trump. Just be mad at Trump. Don't like Trump, so just go for him, get him out. And then, boy, you'll be left with a price to pay after that. Guys, this is becoming just kind of a train wreck, or kind of almost like a comedy of errors. But here's what I want to say is the leftist media is ignoring the Hunter Biden thing as much as they possibly can. There's minimal reporting on it. But a few years ago, when Justice Brett Kavanaugh was going to be approved to the Supreme Court, when he was having his Senate hearings, these bogus accusations rose up. I mean, they went through every detail and every bit of dirt they could find on him, and then they believed or put on national media anyone that had anything bad to say about him. And this woman rose up with all these accusations, which were later on proved to be completely fabricated, and yet she was given the limelight, given the press focus, given the credibility, given the, oh wow, imagine if he did that, that sounds terrible, and he probably did. Now, it was a big lie. But the media is choosing. And what I am starting to see is that there's no consequence. CNN, MSNBC, the big networks, the liberal media, they have enough support, corporate support, and support from the American people, enough American people. But really, it's the big corporations that fund them. That there's no consequence. There's no fallout. If they lie, if they distort, if they ignore important stories, and if they pop up and push forward fabricated stories and lying stories, they're going to get away with it. That's what I'm getting at here, folks. It's really comical and it's really sad. We've hit that point where 90% of the media is controlled by just 6 major corporations. And in a way, they are almost above the law. And then, as I've talked about with big tech getting involved and all the money behind big tech and big media and big corporations, they think they kind of control the world and they control the narrative. Now, we do live in an exciting time where citizen bloggers, citizen journalists, and social media folks and people like myself are able to have an audience and a platform through YouTube and podcasting and social media. And there's plenty of citizen bloggers and citizen journalists, people that don't work for CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, the major networks, and even Fox News. And there's an impact there. There is an importance there. But let's not deceive ourselves. By and large, most Americans are still getting their news from these larger outlets. So I'm so glad that citizen voices are coming up. And by citizen, again, I don't mean not professional or don't have good standards. I'm just saying it's the definition of working for a major media outfit versus being your own media outfit or working more independently. Ben Shapiro, all these great, Candace Owens, all these great voices that are rising up out there. So, and they are rising and they are having a good platform. But the big media and the people that are conspiring, openly conspiring, like I said, I watch the news whenever I go to the gym. And again, all you're going to see on MSNBC and CNN is just how bad Trump is, how much the coronavirus is going up, how terrible life is here, how much we need to get him out, how much we need Biden, and even the stories about the polls, folks. They'll say things like, oh, don't believe those polls. Trump's not really doing better. And we have polls that show he's falling and Biden's going to win these swing states and all this kind of stuff. And then you have Fox News, one TV over, saying Trump's doing better than ever. The polls show the tide is turning. The swing states are going for Trump. Trump is heading for a surge. He's heading for a landslide. And personally, I believe that. And I also pray that it happens. But here's the thing. You have these totally alternate realities of the same set of facts, polls, rallies, events, whatnot, candidates even. And yet, one side is going to end up being completely wrong. Now, they were completely wrong in 2016. Trump got in, he won handily over Hillary Clinton. And yet, almost nobody predicted it, and everything was so slanted the other way. And yet, 4 years later, they're doing the exact same thing, and they think you're not going to notice. They think they can pull it over on the American people. They think they have a right to do this, and they're able to do it. I saw a tweet the other day, because someone had retweeted it, and it was Tampax, owned by Procter & Gamble. I mean, it's a major company, but it's a subsidiary. It's part of Procter & Gamble. It's one of their brands, really. That is the main company. Put out a tweet that said, not everyone who has a period is a woman. And Ben Shapiro, and I think it said trans is beautiful at the end of it. Now, here is a major company. I mean, most people think of Procter & Gamble as like the most American. It has some of the most iconic American brands. I mean, Tide and Crest and Playtex tampons and just, all these major brands that most of us buy, most of us know, we've grown up with. They've been in families for generations. And yet here they are supporting this leftist agenda, transgender stuff, and things that so many Americans don't support and would not put with down-home American values and traditional things. Or then the Girl Scouts. They had that article celebrating women justices, the various women who've been appointed to the Supreme Court. I think it's only 5. And so they had they put out some kind of release with the 5 pictures. Now you have liberal and conservative women on there. You have Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sonia Sotomayor, totally liberal, Sandra Day O'Connor, and now you have, and this was done kind of in honor of Justice Amy Coney Barrett. And yes, she is what's known as a more conservative justice. She's a constitutionalist. And because there's so much furor over her getting on right now, so much backlash, so much anger, and Trump put her on, so she must be bad or wrong, that the Girl Scouts, a non-political, non-partisan organization, at least to my knowledge, that is simply out to encourage girls to rise up into leadership and prominent positions. Again, in my opinion, and I didn't read the actual post, but looked balanced to me. It had the liberal and the conservative justices. What they had in common is they're all women, celebrating the women who have risen up to the Supreme Court. And they got so much backlash, they pulled it down. They pulled it down. And yet, how many people are still going to buy products from Procter & Gamble? or still send their girls to Girl Scouts, even though these organizations are caving to or supporting radical ideas that many Americans don't support, or caving to the far left agenda, or even furthering it. And yet people don't make the connection, or they just aren't aware of how like openly biased now CNN or MSNBC is, or conversely you could say Fox News toward the president. I mean, they're completely pro-Trump and they don't apologize for it. I remember back in the day Rush Limbaugh used to say, I am the equal time. Because what Rush was saying is, in journalism you're supposed to give equal time. And I was a journalist, so I know this, that when you cover an issue like abortion, for instance, I mean, you're supposed to ask the pro-life side their opinion and ask the pro-choice side their opinion. You're supposed to put them both in. You can't spend a whole broadcast just interviewing the pro-choice side for 5, 10, 15 minutes and only give like 30 seconds to the pro-life side. Now, sadly, that's a lot of what ends up happening nowadays. The media is so openly biased on the topic of abortion. But the principle, and maybe if I picked a less inflammatory issue, like, I can't even think of one right now, but should we raise taxes or not? You know, you're going to have one side going, raise it, and one side's going, don't, and, you know, what to do. Well, you're supposed to try to give equal time. But Rush Limbaugh was making a statement, and he was saying this even back in the 80s and early 90s. He's like, look, guys, the media is so far skewed to the left that, yeah, I'm skewed to the right, but I'm doing it because I am the equal time. I don't have to give equal time. The time I'm giving is the time that the leftist media should be giving to equal out. But since they won't do it, I give it here. And it's just very interesting, the world in which we live. So I look at the media and there's just so little price to pay. They're going to be wrong again. They're openly biased again. They're skewed in their reporting. They're skewed in what they're ignoring. They're choosing to ignore real news about Hunter Biden and possibly Joe Biden. And we don't know, I talked about this before, there are directives given in the media, like don't cover that case or your career's in jeopardy, or if you do, minimize it, if you do, downplay it, if you do, don't sensationalize it, or bury it in the coverage on a deep page in a paper, a low point on a website, or at the end of a news broadcast. Not everyone stays till the end. So there's a lot of agenda going on here. And kind of my fear, or kind of the witness in my spirit is there's not a great price to pay. That this media that's so well funded, supported by corporations, and they think they're right, they think they're entitled, they think they're empowered to do this. They have no conscience. And what's the worst that happens? They ignore the Hunter Biden thing, and then a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month after the election, it comes out, it was real, and whatnot. They're going to go, oops, sorry. And unless the whole thing is able to actually really get up to vote Joe Biden, and you know he's a pretty smart guy, lifelong politician. I'm pretty certain that he did his best to keep his hands clean, or clean enough that it doesn't look good, it doesn't sound good. Everything points to him being involved in some pretty negligent or pretty bad, pretty negative ways. But even his own brother said, as Tony Bobulinski was quoted, plausible deniability. That there's probably enough there to just keep denying, is Joe Biden involved, actually involved? Oh, no. Kind of like O.J. Simpson. I mean, many people think, yeah, he did it. That he killed, his former wife and her boyfriend or her lover. And yet, there was just enough to deny it in a court of law. That just enough seeds of doubt and masterful job by the attorneys that the jurors are like, well, I can't say beyond the shadow of a doubt that he did it. I think he was actually found guilty in a lesser court or in a lesser statute. The actual full-on murder in a court, it was like, no, not enough evidence for that. But he was later sued in some kind of maybe a civil court to some degree of endangerment or some lesser standard where the standard of proof was less, and I'm pretty sure he was found guilty of that. So what I'm getting at here is the media, most of the media is not going to tell you something they don't want you to hear these days, and especially in this key lead up to the election. And there's very little that will force them to do that. Now, maybe the way to get the media to change or wake up at least a little bit is prove them wrong again. When you, your family, your friends, your church, the people you're associated with, when you turn out en masse and you vote for Donald Trump and Republican legislators and the Republican tickets, you may see people start to wake up. I have to say that. I'll probably say more in my Monday edition. But who you vote for really matters, and not just at the top of the ticket. If you look at the way Democratic governors have locked down their states, I was in Kentucky, and it's a fairly conservative state, kind of a swingy state, and they happen to have put in a liberal Democratic governor in the previous election. And man, the way they were dealing with COVID, so many people were so unhappy. It actually matters who runs your state. State governments, it's important. So I'll say more about that in a little bit. But that's why I want to talk about if you really believe in what Trump's doing and you want to see him get in, it's almost imperative that you also support the Republican ticket on down. The fact that Justice Amy Coney Barrett was able to get in is because there is a Republican Senate. The Democrats would have done everything possible, but 1, 2, 3 seats switch hands, and it's a completely different reality. And the Senate is a mighty legislative body, able to block and stop a lot of things. So even though Nancy Pelosi is currently Speaker of the House, the Senate was in Republican hands. The justice got in. But it would not be the same if the Democrats got their way. Now, folks, we also see kind of the wheels coming off the Democrats, that we were saying it all along. The Democrats believe in court packing. Biden and Harris would pack the court, add justices, add their own liberal justices in order to try to overcome Justice Amy Coney Barrett and the conservatives that have gotten on there. And almost immediately, and of course Joe Biden would never take a stand, would never deny it because it's true. Kamala Harris as well. And then right after Amy Coney Barrett's confirmed, you have AOC, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, saying, pack the court, and other super liberal people in the House calling for it openly. Add justices. The very thing that even super liberal Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, I don't think it's a good idea. So the wool's coming off the eyes and things are open. I don't necessarily trust big media to repent, to admit they got it wrong, but I want to see the look on their faces once again. When the American people rise up and say, no, we're going to vote for who we really want. Black folks are rising up. We're not going to do just what we're told. Well, you're black, you have to vote Democrat. You're black, you can't support Trump. No. Thousands, millions are rising up and saying, you know what? We are going to vote for Trump. We like him. We support him. He's actually the best candidate. And his policies are lifting folks out of poverty of all colors, races, and creeds. I think one other thing I want to say is it's just becoming abundantly clear to me how much the liberals and the radical left want to divide us. They want to sow division. They want to see the streets burning. Why? Because when society crumbles, they can rise up and take control. And for a liberal and a leftist, more government, more power, more control is always the answer. Not standards, not law and order, like Donald Trump and most Republicans support, the rule of law, but no, the rule by absolute, body of people. Surrendering personal liberties, surrendering personal freedoms. And so they feed off the chaos. This is classic revolutionary playbook. And you can look it up in Saul Alinsky's Rule for Radicals, which was Hillary Clinton and Obama's playbook from their younger years, which I believe totally shaped them and probably still did in their political days, in their political careers. It's you got to accuse the other side of doing what you're doing. Check. Create chaos. Check. Sow division. Check. Hammer on the foundations of society. Check. All the things that these folks are doing, and yet they categorically deny it when you catch them red-handed. And, oh no, they say peace and safety, they want peace and prosperity, but really they hate it. They hate that the economy is going back up. Strongest third quarter growth on record under Trump. They hate it. They hated that the economy was going so well over his first 3 years, they had to get the virus to wreck it. You got to have your eyes open to these things, that the far left really is out to divide us. And I will be talking both during and especially right after the election about being a peacemaker and how to actually come together. And I want to call on you, especially if you are someone who is a follower of Jesus. And I can't presuppose where your political views are. I know many or most evangelicals are on the right, conservative side. But regardless, you have a calling, if you actually follow Christ, to be a peacemaker, a bridge builder, a speaker of truth and truth in love. But I want to say again, the hope for unity actually comes from getting behind a constructive cause, like President Trump. When the economy's growing, when life is improving, people don't have a lot of time to sit around and hate because they're too busy working. They're too busy improving lives. They're too busy starting companies. They're too busy thriving. When there's momentum, like behind President Trump, you have like this openly gay man, Brandon Strack, coming to a rally and saying he was almost killed with kindness by the way people treated him. We're at war, people, between the far left and just regular American conservative values. And if you're willing to support overall those values, then there's not a lot of room to be fighting. If you support 80 or 90% of that, and you want to see America remain free and remain true to her core values, you don't have time to nitpick with someone because maybe they have a different sexuality or they have differences on one or two issues. I mean, this guy, Brandon, I mean, he wholeheartedly supports Trump. He's against the liberal agenda, and he doesn't have, people don't have time to hate him. Actually, he gets a lot of likes and a lot of love on social media. So, in this environment, I actually believe Trump has a better chance of uniting America. I know he does, compared to the ultra liberal and the super liberal Biden Harris ticket, and the way that Democrats and the far left are sowing division and identity politics and all these kinds of things. And we're seeing it. Black conservatives, we're seeing this man, a gay conservative, we're seeing people actually rally behind something constructive, something that's good for America. Because America originally was meant to be liberty and justice for all. And as Ben Shapiro points out, that's a liberty that's being extended. We're a story that we started in imperfection. We wrote a good ideal on paper, and yeah, at that time did not extend it to all Americans. And maybe we still don't, but we've progressively increased the extension of those freedoms to more and more people. And that is the real story of America. Not horribly wicked, racist, biased nation that remains so to this day, that ignores all the progress that has been made, all the freedoms that have been extended, all the life that's been extended, and will continue to be. But no, you're being sold and told that it's all dark, all negative, we'll never get it right, and therefore we need a radical change, radical shift, the destruction of America, and the start of this new socialist, communistic, totalitarian state, that somehow that's going to make it better. I don't believe it for a second. And I do blame and I do indict the mainstream media and its corporate backers and corporate funders and even big tech, which also is big money and corporations and idealists who completely oppose what America really stands for. They're at fault, folks. And you may not be able to stop them, but you can make them pay. You get out and vote what you really believe on November 3rd.